Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Arizona Consumer Law Group. I'm also founder of the Consumer Warrior Project. And on today's video, I want to address the question of, do you really need a lawyer to file for bankruptcy? And, for good or for bad, bankruptcy has this reputation of really just being, you fill out a few forms, you file them with the court, and, presto, your debts all go away. And usually it is not that simple, but the reality is sometimes it is that simple. And sometimes an attorney is not necessary, which I know is probably not a popular opinion amongst other bankruptcy lawyers like myself. But the truth is there are certain cases where an attorney is really not necessary to file the bankruptcy. The trick is, however, is being able to determine if you have a case that falls into that category. And that's, the ironic thing is that's really where the legal expertise comes in, is an attorney could look at a case and say, yeah, this is going to be a pretty straightforward case, probably not something that an attorney is going to be totally necessary for. I mean, always, the best way to go through the bankruptcy process is with counsel, but for a lot of people, they just simply can't afford it. And I meet with people day in and day out here in my law practice in Arizona that need bankruptcy assistance, but they just simply don't have the funds to be able to go through that process. Because it's a fairly lengthy process. Even a Chapter 7, which is what most people file, here in Arizona you're looking at least a 4 to 5 month process. So you have an attorney working for you during that time period, and there are costs associated with that. However, there are certain cases where it's not necessary. Let me tell you the areas where you need to be careful of if you're just looking to file your own bankruptcy, and some of the areas where an attorney can be helpful. The first is determining if you qualify to file for a Chapter 7. Like I said, Chapter 7 is the most common type of bankruptcy that people file. It's the debt that eliminates credit card debts, medical bills, those types of things, and it generally eliminates those completely. However, back in 2005, they changed the bankruptcy code, and now you have to qualify if you want to file a Chapter 7. You have to pass what's known as the means test. What this is they look at your household size and your income, and they compare that to the average income of the same household size in your particular state. So in Arizona, for a family of 2, as long as you make at or below what the typical family of 2 in Arizona makes, then you're going to qualify for Chapter 7. If you don't, if you make more than that, then you may have to file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, which is a 5-year process. So you can see that it's a pretty big deal to be able to determine whether it's a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. Where an attorney can help you is helping you to qualify if you have more than is allowed under the means test, if your income is too high as compared to what's allowed under the means test. There are many different deductions an attorney can help you with to get below that median income and make it so that you can qualify for a Chapter 7. So it's one of these things where that's where an attorney can be very helpful. It's also one of those things where if you are well below the average income for your household size, you're not going to have to really complete the means test. There's some documents that have to be filled out, but it's not something where you're going through and making deductions where an attorney would be necessary. Second area where an attorney can be very helpful in Chapter 7 bankruptcy in particular is determining if your assets are protected as you go through this process. Now, when you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, all of your non-exempt assets become property of what's known as the bankruptcy estate. And what this is the court can seize these non-exempt assets, sell them, and give the money to your creditors. Now, most things are exempt in Arizona when you go through that process. There's exemptions for homes, like the homestead exemption. Most people are familiar with that. Exemptions for cars, for household goods, wedding rings, retirement accounts, those types of things. An attorney can be very helpful to make sure that you apply the correct exemption to that particular asset. I can't tell you how many times I've sat through bankruptcy hearings where I see someone who's representing themselves who's at risk of losing a very significant asset simply because they didn't apply the right exemption. It also can get kind of tricky if you haven't lived in Arizona for 2 years. If you haven't lived here for 2 years, we've got to use the exemptions from the state from where you came from. So that can be one of the areas that's a little bit tricky, is making sure that the assets that you do disclose, that they're not seized by the court and sold. And it really just kind of rolls right over into the third area, which is exemptions, and making sure that you apply the correct exemptions. Those can be a little bit tricky, but if your case is kind of just one of these straightforward cases where there's really not a lot of assets, again, you qualify very easily because your income is below the median income. Those are the types of situations where they can be straightforward enough. With a little bit of guidance, you can get the bankruptcy case filed and help avoid some of those overall costs associated with the bankruptcy filing. Now, something we do here at the Arizona Consumer Law Group is we do offer limited scope services when it comes to bankruptcy, where we actually help you prepare the bankruptcy documents. I prepare them myself. I go through them with you. I make sure you understand them. We make sure the exemptions are applied correctly. And then you are filing the case, though, on your own. You're actually going to go through the case yourself with some coaching from my office. So that's something you can do that can help reduce some of the costs. It's not appropriate in a lot of cases, but in some cases it just simply is. And it's a way to cut some of the costs associated with the bankruptcy filing and get the debt relief that you're looking for. If you want to learn about that, as far as our limited scope services with the bankruptcy process, or if you want to learn more about what we do as far as debt collection lawsuits, student loan litigation, or even legal coaching or consulting on debt issues, go over to consumerwarrior.com. That's our website. You'll be able to see all the services we provide there. There's also over 500 articles that I've personally written and about another 100 of these types of videos that can give you the information you need to deal with your debt problem. Thanks for watching today.